All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Steve Taylor, host of MSP Webinars. Today, I'm really excited. I've got Jonathan. I'm going to butcher your last name, Jonathan. I'm going to say Calmez. Calmus. Jonathan's the calmest guy I know. We'll go with that. He's a great guy. He's going to talk to us about Aparavi, and Aparavi is a really neat tool, and it's actually, I learned it's a NovaStore funded operation, if I'm saying that correctly, or it's a branch off of NovaStore. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this. I'm going to have a ton of questions because he keeps talking about how Aparavi is unstructured data archiving and backup, and I'll be honest, I have no idea what unstructured data is. You guys might, you might not. I don't know. We're going to find out together. Just some quick housekeeping. Jonathan is going to have a deal that MSP Webinars members will have access to. We'll learn about that later on in the webinar. Next week, we have SlingerBot for Autotask joining us. The week after that, no, I'm sorry. Next week is, I lied. I'm looking at my website. In 2 weeks is SlingerBot for Autotask. In 3 weeks is MSP Processes and Procedures. We're doing another set of that. Next week is a roundtable. And I haven't decided yet, I think I'm going to open that back up to the public because I just feel like, those are helpful. So we'll see how it goes if I open that back up. So without further ado, Jonathan, could you please educate us about yourself and about your company a little bit, and feel free to correct all of the things I said wrong earlier.
All right, I can definitely do that. You hear me okay?
You sound great.
All right, wonderful. So pronunciation of last name, we'll start with that first. Your first go was closest. It's Calmez, which is Americanized French. So that's the basics around that. My wife, who's taken my last name, wishes it was still the French pronunciation, but hey, she has to deal with the Oklahoma version of it, which is where my ancestors hail from. So Aparavi, yeah, we're a backup and archive company for unstructured data, and I'll explain what that means in a bit more detail. But yeah, we were a spin-off from NovaStore. We actually didn't take any pure funding from NovaStore. We took a lot of resources, but NovaStore is a sister company, and Aparavi is actually available through NovaStore as a solution that you can acquire. If anyone on the webinar here is an actual NovaStore customer, you can reach out to them and have all the benefits that you'll learn today with all the benefits of NovaStore with their support models, etc. A little brief history on me. So I was a NovaStore. They were my first job out of college, and over the course of the last 18 years or so, I spent 10 of those at NovaStore, working my way up from your basic cold calling account manager, and eventually becoming VP of sales there, before the chairman of NovaStore asked me to help lead this venture here at Aparavi. So when Aparavi spun off from NovaStore, we took a couple engineers, the CTO, and myself. And then from there, we've built all new employees. We're in a different office. We're in Santa Monica as opposed to Agora Hills. But we are constantly collaborating with the NovaStore team over there, and work pretty closely together. But they are separate companies. So unstructured data, kind of what is it? Unstructured data is everything besides your databases, right? So it is the user-generated data on a day-to-day basis that is growing at massive rates. Many of you are likely reading industry analyst information, and the big thing you're going to see right now is hybrid cloud architectures, multi-cloud architectures, as well as just the rapid amount of data growth that we're seeing. And that data growth is coming primarily in the form of unstructured data. And we'll talk more about that on the next slide. But I also wanted to give you guys kind of a brief introduction to Aparavi as far as the name. It's a fun name. It's fun to say. I usually say Aparavi, with the Italian accent. But Aparavi comes from the Latin word operare, which means to prepare, make ready, or equip. So where we are today is we believe that we're going to help organizations and MSPs be prepared for the future of data protection and archive, which we'll talk through here. I see a couple little questions and chats in here. I wish I was as multi-talented as my wife, but I can only do one thing at a time. So I will be sure to answer questions as we go on here.
I'll make it even easier for you. One of the things that I like to do is just kind of be the voice of the people, so to speak. Sure. So as questions come up, I will definitely, if I find a time to kind of take a break in your presentation, I'll do that. Worst case, I'll just make sure they get asked at the end before we close out.
Wonderful. That makes life easy. And I will apologize in advance. We are a dog-friendly office, and Rio, the office dog, is sitting next to me. So if she barks, I apologize. But I think she's pretty tired right now, so we should be okay.
That sounds like fun, man. That sounds great, actually.
Yeah, it's nice. We've got about 7 or 8 dogs in different varying parts of the office. So it's lunchtime is always a fun walk. So, all right, moving right along. So we talked a little bit about the tsunami of unstructured data, and there's a quick graph here that I'm sure isn't quite to scale, but unstructured data is forecasted to grow around 60% year over year. It is forecasted to be 90% of all data globally by 2023. And the biggest issue with it is that it's millions and millions of discrete files, right? It's not a database file where you have, information logs. Another term that you might hear around unstructured data is dark data, because historically there hasn't been a great way to learn anything from that. But industries that are industry-wide, this is an issue. So, for example, and Steve and I were wrapping a little bit before the webinar. Manufacturing engineering, as those groups are retooling, the machines that they are using are generating massive amounts of data. For example, and this is a big example, an enterprise example, but a GE engine on a airplane generates around 4 terabytes of data every 100 miles or so. So it is a massive amount of sensor data that is being beamed back down to the ground. So GE at all times knows exactly what's going on with the engine on their aircrafts. Southwest probably doesn't benefit from from this data with their old engines. Don't fly Southwest right now. But at any rate, yeah, those type of engines are generating massive amounts of data, right? Another example, Boeing is a past customer of mine and current prospect here at Aparavi. All of the machines that are building out the fuselages on the aircrafts all have sensors and machines attached to them and are generating massive amounts of data. This is all considered unstructured data because it's not structured in a database format. One of the things that surprised me, and this is a statistic by Enterprise Strategy Group, ESG. They're an analyst firm. I highly suggest following them if you don't already. They're finding that 85% of archived data is being accessed very frequently, right? So historically, I think a lot of us think of archived data as kind of like put out to pasture, right? Or where data goes to die is your archive. It's written off the tape. Some organizations are saying, well, just put it in the cloud. Some organizations are saying, well, I've got an external 4 terabyte Seagate drive. Let's dump it on that thing. But typically, in the past, the thought was it's cold, it's somewhere else, it's off my primary storage, I'm not going to worry about it. If I get audited for some reason, I know where it is. However, medium businesses and enterprises are seeing that this archive data is accessed very frequently. That 80% of what's being accessed is actually created within the last 2 years, so fairly new data, and 71% of it's retrieved is 100 gigabytes or less. So you hear me use the word retrieve versus recovery, and I'll define that now. Retrieval is pulling something back for the purpose of analytics, right? For DevOps, for example, using real data as opposed to modeled data. Another audit is another scenario. But the assumption with retrieval is that it's not overriding what's in production. That's recovery, right? The basic understanding of a recovery job from backup is saying, oh no, what I have in production is either been corrupted, it's been infected, it's been deleted, or we had some sort of hardware failure, and that's a recovery. So you're making the assumption that what you have in your backup is better than what you have in production. You want to recover to what you have in your backup. So that's the basic definitions there. With this, the problems that we're seeing here with unstructured data growth, right now, this is by and large a medium business enterprise style problem. But with the forecasted data growth, this is going to trickle down all the way to your smaller manufacturing engineering firms, at probably a slower pace than what enterprise is seeing. Enterprise has these issues now, right? Where I think small, medium business is going to have these issues tomorrow. So backup is not the solution, right? And why we say that is backup primarily, when the engines for backup were built, they were built for structured data as a primary source in favor of availability and speed of recovery, right? And that is absolutely appropriate. Where we're at today is kind of this interesting place where you have engines, the modern engines, we'll say modern, were built for availability. Think Veeam, for example. They're in image-based formats, but the other solutions that are out there that are in non-image-based formats were really built around structured data as the primary data source. As far as long-term data retention or archival is concerned, compliance, HIPAA, for example, the engines were designed around tape. Tape was primarily let's get this off to the cheapest amount of storage possible. I found it hilarious. We had a customer with a Commvault implementation, and when you were going to set up the S3 connector to get out to Amazon, it walked you through all the tape library language setup, but instead of like an LTO device, you were selecting S3. But it literally followed the same ideology as tape because the underlying engine couldn't support anything else. They were at the same time we're building something new on the other side to connect into it. All that's to say is really they're not cloud optimized, right? The cloud connectors, cloud gateways would require significant resources. They added a lot of complexity. Oftentimes they became plug-in costs, right? And frankly, they're broken. They were not or are not handling a cloud location appropriately. The other thing is the prevalence now of multi-cloud. There's more options out there. I think a lot of vendors want to say, hey, go to the this cloud, right? The Infrascale, the Datto, the Druva, the Carbonite, the Mozy. They want you into their cloud because they know once you get in that cloud, you're not getting out. Not without significant pain of bringing all that data back down on-prem before moving somewhere else. And that's sort of the thing that Aparavi is trying to address. So we've talked problem, we've talked what unstructured data is. Let's hop right into kind of the solution side of it. I'll pause here for a second before getting into kind of a real customer use case. But Steve, are there any questions so far that you want me to address?
So far, Quentin flies Southwest, and I think he's sad.
Yeah, I mean, from engine failures to window failures, they haven't had exactly a a good run. My father was an Alaska Airlines pilot, so fly Alaska.
Poor Quentin. So please continue.
Yep, absolutely. So here's a real customer use case. This is a engineering firm. They actually do automated welding. They've got not a ton of data. They've got 12 terabytes, but it's growing pretty quickly, right? And part of that is as they retooled, their machines are generating additional data that they've got to do something with by law. They can't just delete it. That data is growing at around 50% per year. Again, they need to hold it for a minimum of 7 years. One of the interesting things is this customer wants to hold it longer because they see the value in analytics. For example, they want to be able to learn from their data over time. And they're currently using Veeam, and this to take their idea of an archive is taking a complete image annually, for those 7 years. Now, you can start to imagine what happens by year 7. You've got 7 entire copies of your data. You've also got some pretty major issues as far as recovery RPO. So in conjunction with the issue of taking images annually, they're also generate every year when they do that image out to cloud, for example. This is actually going to Amazon S3, if I recall correctly. They're jeopardizing their recovery point objective. With Aparavi, we were able to do a proof of concept, and we predicted a 50% reduction of storage across the first 7 years, and then after that, a 75% reduction. And this is by replacing their current backup solution with ours. Now, this is kind of a how we play nice with others scenario. So Aparavi can be used in a couple different scenarios, and we're going to get into to how it's structured and the features it has here on the next couple slides. Aparavi can be used in conjunction with a business continuity tool or availability tool like a Veeam or a Datto or a StorageCraft, something along those lines, which is their core, claim to fame is failover. It's business continuity. It's not necessarily holding data for long periods of time. So if any of you have tried to use StorageCraft, for example, for long-term data retention, you'll realize that their recommendations historically have been, well, you need to do another full backup of your cloud location monthly, or else the chain gets so long that it's likely to get corrupted. And once the chain's corrupted, everything's not recoverable. When I was working at Novastore, that was like the common thing that MSPs would come to us to try and solve was the incremental forever issue with traditional backup and really with image-based backup. So the Aparavi solution is a better way. So getting into some of the features and benefits of the solution, we built a multi-cloud protection and retention engine, and this allows you to use any combination of public or private clouds. So Aparavi is not a cloud location. We do not store your data. We prepare it and move it constantly, based on your policies. So this can use, again, any combination of public and private clouds, and we'll talk our ecosystem here in a couple slides. But it can also use on-premises storage as well, right? So if you don't, have a cloud location and you want to define a path, you can do that as well. It doesn't have to be, cloud, right? One of the benefits of this multi-cloud protection and retention is that you can use one cloud today and switch to another at any point. And Aparavi actually continues to allow data recovery from the old cloud while putting all additional and change data to the new one. So in the past, and I haven't seen another solution do this, and we've had analysts kind of tell us this as well. If you needed to move storage locations, you would have to bring all that back into a staging environment before moving it all to the secondary cloud to remove corruption. By the way that we are actually placing data in the cloud, each file is an individual object, and that allows us not only to move. You can have a base file, for example, on Amazon S3, and you could have all your increments on Google, right? Or all your increments on Wasabi, or all your increments on Azure. our software allows you to have this seamless data migration between locations is incredibly dynamic. One of the big benefits within that is we have what we call Aparavi's cloud active data pruning. And this is a patent pending technology that utilizes sub-file blocks to remove files and portions of files as your policy defines. So when we talk about saving storage, you talk about saving 50%, up front just by the nature of the way we're storing data, but 75% over time. That 75% of storage reduction comes from this pruning. So as opposed to a traditional incremental forever solution, which is going to chain data together where each file is reliant on the file before it, we're actually sending dynamic links. So we can actually go in and remove data, and those links will link to the appropriate place to make sure that the data isn't being corrupted. That allows us to actually remove data out of a cloud or multi-cloud or on-premises environment the moment its retention policy retention period expires. So if you've got 7-year retention, as soon as that individual, even if it's a byte or a block level change or a brand new file, we're able to remove it the moment its policy expires. You cannot do this with images, for example. If you're using an image-based tool for long-term retention, you can't go into that image and remove little pieces of it automatically. It's just not possible. You have to wait until the youngest file in that entire image comes to its expiration before that image can be removed. And oftentimes the software isn't going to do that automatically. You've got to go and either use S3 tools or you've got to do it manually, which can come at a cost. We also built an open data format. And what we mean by that is everything is documented. So anyone can make sense of what our format is doing. And this is huge when you're thinking of long-term retention. I don't know how many of you guys have been in this game for long, but you might remember, how a, LTO, something written in LTO 3 can no longer be read by, LTO 6, for example. This is a major issue with longer term retention and as data formats change. Another common issue that we saw in backup previously at Novastore was, hey, I'm on version 12 of your software. You're now on 18. Can 18 read 12? And it's like, well, no, you're going to have to go from 12 to 13 to 14 to 15 to 16. You have to do this, upgrade in stages in order to get the data, in order to be able to recover that data and have it readable. By Aparavi implementing an open data format, this prevents any complications with long-term recovery. It works hand in hand with our storage models to not only remove the storage vendor lock-in, because you can move freely between your cloud locations, but it also removes any lock-in you guys might feel from Aparavi by having this documented format. We also are building a reader as well if someone just wants to, without having to install our software, be able to pull data back and read it. So big commitment to open here at Aparavi. So Aparavi also has a patented kind of point-in-time recovery from multiple clouds. So we can recover to a specific point in time because we do leverage file-by-file snapshot technologies. But this allows you to select a specific date and time, and the software is actually going to know exactly what it needs to do to rebuild that data. So if it's spread across 4 different clouds, the platform seamlessly will be able to recover that file to that specific point in time from any of those cloud locations. So the big benefit here is over a period of 7 years, you might not know exactly where your data is. This is really common, especially if there's turnover in IT, or if you're an MSP, for example, coming into an environment that another MSP is managed with Aparavi. Rather than having to go look through audit logs and try and figure out, okay, when did they move clouds, et cetera. Aparavi allows you to recover without knowing where the data is. You don't even know, you just need to know when it was. So all of this is delivered as a software as a service. So Aparavi hosts the main platform which I'll get into here in a couple slides, the architecture. And that allows us to offer this as, a pay-as-you-go, scale-as-needed business model where you guys don't need to host anything. So to simplify all of this, we use a policy engine, and the policy engine allows you to define policy based on file exclusion and inclusion lists. And for full automation, once a policy is set on the platform, it's automatically sent to the client and executed upon. So this is huge for an MSP because you don't have to go in and configure each individual job or schedule on each node that you're implementing, right? So if you get a client that says, "Hey, I've got 40 servers with this type of policies on, I've got a financial server, I've got an accounting server, etc., and I've got 100 workstations or 200 workstations, what have you." Once you define the policy, it'll automatically be applied and executed upon on a per machine basis. So that one benefit is, as you're rolling stuff out, you define one policy and you don't have to go to each individual node to make a change. The other thing is, if a policy changes, for example, say an organization gets slapped with a new regulation, right? We see GDPR, for example, coming out and everyone's scrambling to deal with that. With Aparavi, you can make a simple change to the policy and it trickles down all automatically through the entire organization and then executes upon that new policy. We also provide a comprehensive set of tools so you can understand, what you have. So we can search through metadata, we can search through, folder name, file name, server name. All of those things are searchable. And right now, we're actually building out content-based search. So if it's an audit scenario and you need to find everything that contains a certain employee's name, you can search by that. And it will search by metadata, by folder name, by file name, by server name, and also the content itself. Very, very rapidly, we're cataloging and indexing this the moment we pick it up, as opposed to having to rely on it later.
So just to clarify, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
you are able to search the data itself. So if there's a Word document and I have the word onomatopoeia in that document and I know how to spell it, I can search for that using your tool.
Absolutely.
And it will find that word in the document and then it'll show me the document.
Yep, it'll pull up the the document. It's also going to pull not the original document, but it will pull up the file. All the files that have it will show up in a search. It's almost like and I can't say this legally, but a Google-fied search that as you type, it's going to start showing all your results, and then you're able to select that and decide what you want to do with it. If you want to preview it in like a raw text form, you can do that, or if you need to retrieve it, you can do that as well.
So to clarify, it's an illegal Google search?
Yeah, more or less. It's not using Google as an engine, no.
Sure.
It's proprietary to us. But yeah, it in essence allows you to search by keyword, and it'll bring up all results associated with that keyword, whether it's based on metadata, content, folder name, file name, server name, etc. And this is alongside that, and this is talking a little bit futures. We're building a classifications engine right now. So and I'll actually show you what our roadmap looks like here in a couple slides. But let me get through this and we'll go to the roadmap and talk a bit more.
Sounds good.
Yep. So we also provide a set of tools so you can understand your storage trends. So this not only tells you, how many pruning jobs you're doing, but how much data is being saved by our pruning algorithms. It's going to tell you, how much data you're placing into cloud. If you've got multiple cloud locations, on a graphical historical view, it's going to show you, how your data is growing in cloud or how it's shrinking. Maybe if you're switching between clouds and our pruning algorithm is going in and cleaning up behind itself, as well as on premise. And this is going to help you guys with your client data as well, because it's you can either do it on a global basis, so you can see big view, or you can see it on an individual, per user, per group, per machine type tool. So we're also, right now, this is all based on historical data, which is important to note. we are going to be partnering with an AI tool to actually be able to do some predictive analytics as well. We're big believers in doing only what we believe is, in our wheelhouse. So if it's something like future analytics and predictive analytics, machine learning, things like that, it's like, hey, look, there's a bevy of people we can partner with to provide, better insights as opposed to trying to build it ourselves. One of my favorite trackers in our storage analytics is the percent change monitor. And this is huge for you guys who have clients worried about crypto viruses, which I'm sure all your clients are. That will actually has the capability to set warnings. It's almost like an if then that tool where if, and you define this, if my data has changed by 70% on a per machine basis, I want you to pause all archives out to the cloud. I want you to send me a text message, send my customer a text message, and alert these appropriate people within the infrastructure. So it's very advanced reporting and monitoring there. But percent change is obviously one great way to know if your data has all been encrypted. And this helps prevent, further encryption out into your long-term storage. We also built it with auditing and reporting capabilities, so it logs, who changed what and when. This is in the scenario of, an actual, audit for, whatever industry, right? If you get, sued for whatever reason, we're able to see who did what when, or maybe it's a malicious employee, for example, who's going in and deleting stuff. We're able to track all that if you've given them access to it, which is kind of the last point here. Everything is built multi-tier, multi-tenant. And what we mean by multi-tier and multi-tenant is not only can you have, different tenants seeing, what, their data without having to see everyone else's, you can also create tiers of tenants, meaning, and I use the example of an apartment building here. You might have a different landlord for each floor or HOA manager, for example. And then, but overall, you've got a building owner. So the building owner is able to see everything. The floor manager can see whatever's happening on his floor. And maybe the head of HOA has some restricted access where they can view, but they can't, do anything other than look. You can set that all up through the policy. So this is great for MSPs because it was built out the gate, multi-tenant and multi-tier. It's also great if you're an MSP servicing remote office, branch office type scenarios where you have a IT person at a branch office that needs to see everything happening in their branch and have full control over that, but they don't need to see everything happening at another branch. Or it can be department by department where you want to give the accounting department visibility of all the servers in accounting, but not outside of that. So very, very advanced on that. We built it in conjunction with some of the nation's largest service providers, and got their feedback of what they wanted to see in a multi-tiered tenant solution and built that. So very, very flexible there. So architecture-wise, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how things work. So Aparavi uses a 3-tiered architecture, and this consists of the Aparavi hosted platform, and this is going to manage all your policies and tenants. It's HTML5, so you just log in through platform.aparavi.com, and that manages kind of all the users, your push notifications. It really is kind of management central. Down on the actual premise of the customer, you've got 2 pieces of software. You've got our software appliance, and so this can be deployed. For example, right now we've actually got our software appliance in house. Yes, we eat our own dog food. She just looked at me. Food. The software appliance, we deploy it on a QNAP NAS inside of a Linux environment, a KVM instance, I believe. So that's a great way to deploy the software appliance. And then the source itself runs a transparent agent, runs as a service in the background. There's no UI capabilities unless you want to give that to them. How these kind of all 3 of these work in concert with each other is as soon as a installation is put in place, what we do is the source checks into the appliance checks into the platform. That appliance will run a file-based snapshot. And what that is it's going to go to the source and it's going to say, okay, everything you've told me to pick up, I'm gonna pick up, I'm gonna index, I'm gonna catalog, and it's gonna live on the appliance. And that's what a snapshot is. The other storage operation that actually happens at the source is the checkpoint. Now, a checkpoint and a snapshot, from what they're doing, they're actually identical. They're both looking at the entire contents of what you've selected, and you're taking a quick file by file, index file by file snapshot, so you can do that point in time recovery. But the checkpoints are more CDP style. You can run by policy, you can have them running constantly, right? So we say near CDP because no one liked the as a file changes, it picks it up. Everyone in the world hated that from a resources standpoint on a server, especially in a virtualized world. So it's by policy. Again, we have default policies you can adhere to, but it will be, let's say, for example, you want those to run every 5 minutes, right? That's the time you want. So what's going to happen is the first time, since a snapshot has already been done, the checkpoint is already going to have an index of, what's changed and what's new. So that first checkpoint is a synthetic incremental where it's only grabbing the bit or the block changes depending on the file size and how much has changed. And then it's going to store those locally on direct attached storage on a NAS, for example, if you want to do it that way. Or I've got it cached inside of my actual hard drive. Now, why that's okay is in an hour, you're going to do another snapshot by policy. Let's say you want to do snapshots every hour, checkpoints every 5 minutes. Once a snapshot is done and it's verified that it's fully on the appliance, the software cleans up behind itself. So it's going to delete all those checkpoints automatically. So you free up that storage again. So you really can think of that as like a temporary recovery cache as opposed to a true storage location. Checkpoints are really for those, oops moments where you deleted a file, something got corrupted, you saved the wrong version. You can just go back really quickly as opposed to having to go out to the appliance or even to the cloud or a different premise to get data. The same thing happens with our archives, our active archives. So what will happen with those is once by policy, you say you're going to run those nightly or weekly, depending on your customer use case by policy. The archive itself will send that out to whichever cloud location you've defined. And then you define how many versions of the snapshots you want to hold on-prem. So you can say, I only want to hold one snapshot. So again, as soon as the archive is done, you'll only be running one snapshot. We usually don't recommend that. We usually say like 5. But at any rate, you're not going to have this exponential growth on a your appliance as well, if that makes sense. Are there any questions on that, on the architecture so far?
No, I've got a couple that I'll keep for the end though.
Good, perfect. All right. So from a support ecosystem standpoint, we support all Windows and Linux environments. From a Windows standpoint, we follow the Windows support. So if Microsoft supports it, we support it. If they don't, we don't officially support it, but chances are it's going to work. You didn't hear that from me. Support will kill me. The other thing is we do Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE Linux, no Mac support. So that's important to know. It is on a far off roadmap, but because we're focused mainly on server data, Mac obviously isn't important. From a cloud support standpoint, we support Google Cloud, AWS S3, we support Azure, IBM Cloud as well. And we're also right now building out Oracle, and we're doing some work with OpenStack, but there's also some third-party tools out there that can help you use OpenStack if that's what you guys are interested in. Certified storage and partners, Wasabi. If you guys haven't heard of Wasabi, this is my Wasabi sales pitch. I don't get any money for this. We're partnered with them. You can select them dynamically from our platform, as well as Kuringo, Scality, and Cloudian. But Wasabi is the same guys who started Carbonite, David Friend, after he sold that off. This is his new venture, and you can go to their website and kind of see their claim to fame, but they're 6 times faster and 1/5 the cost of Amazon S3, for example. So you won't see them at AWS reInvent because I don't think Amazon wants them there. but they are a great tool, especially for an MSP to make some money on building backups or storing backups, because they are in essence charging Glacier costs, less than a penny per gig, and are faster than S3. So great company there. We're pretty close partners.
Hey, Jonathan, I see some things that you support. I don't see Backblaze B2 on here.
Yeah, so Backblaze B2 is an interesting one. We support any object storage using the S3 API protocol with V4 authentication. Backblaze B2 is currently V2 authentication. So it is something I have asked for, but it is not on our immediate roadmap, but it is something that we've identified and feel is important. But at this point, we don't have any compatibility with it because they're on a previous authentication model, which I don't know if that matters from a security standpoint or anything. So don't be like, oh, Backblaze B2, they're on V2. Aparavi's on V4 and everyone else is on V4. It's I don't know the implications there. I just know that we can't actually authenticate against it natively yet. So I know that they've done some testing with it, and it is something we've identified as important, but not as important as some of the other locations like Oracle that we're going to.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right. From a roadmap standpoint, this is kind of where we're going. I'm just going to pull up all these at once so you guys can have some information overload here. But from a storage standpoint, we're going to be doing storage tiering, and this is going to be policy-based movement of your archived data. So what this could look like is you say for the first year, I want to keep it on S3. And then after that, I want to move it to Glacier. And then after that, I want to delete it, for example. So it in essence allows you to create automated tiers of storage movements. You could even say, I want it back down on premise because I'm going to, throw it off to true cold storage like tape. Or it could be as advanced as, for the first year, I want it to go to Amazon. Then I want it to go to Wasabi, and then I want it to go to the Azure archive tier. So very, very, granular movement of data as it ages, right? We want to make sure that we give people the freedom to get to the cheapest location possible or appropriate with their data. The data-centric retention policy. So we talked a little bit about classification. So with that, we're going to be able to classify data, say, okay, this is financial data, for example, through automation and through a kind of a known list of classifications that is widely accepted in the industry. We're able to specify that and then say, okay, I want all my financial data to go to this 5.9's Amazon S3 location, whereas all of my other data is not as important. I'm going to send that somewhere else. For example, to Glacier directly, for example. The advanced archive search, again, search data based on content, classification, and metadata. It kind of goes hand in hand. And this is where things like legal hold comes into play, because once you know what you have, you're actually able to then say what you want to freeze. So this is a stepping stone towards legal hold. And then the granular storage optimization is the policy and on-demand destruction of sensitive data. If any of you guys are following along with GDPR, I know in the US it's not that big of a deal, especially for small, medium business, but for Europe it's huge. And especially with what's going on with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, I think there's a good chance that we're going to start seeing GDPR-like regulations here in the US. But you can actually, if someone says, hey, I want you to delete all my data, with our search, you'll be able to discover all their data. With our tool, you'll be able to destroy that, not only in your cloud locations, but on your on-premises storage as well, and off of primary. So we're going to go all the way back down. And this is where some of our archiving features are coming into play. As data, as you define data to be archived, we'll actually start cleaning it up on primary storage as well. if you guys want that. So it's obviously an option, and we obviously warn before we do that, but the platform will be able to not only remove data out of the cloud, but also remove it off primary and once it's archived. All right, so I've got, I think 2 more slides before questions here. So just a quick, look at, Aparavi versus a typical backup solution from a billing standpoint. In a typical backup scenario, we see that the backup company is billing the MSP on a per client basis. With Aparavi, it's aggregate billing. So we bill on source data protected on an aggregate basis. So you as an MSP, as economies of scale, come into play, you as an MSP are going to benefit from that economies on your smallest customer to your largest customer, because we're billing on aggregate. So this gives you complete account control from an MSP standpoint. From secondary storage growth, a typical backup solution, you're going to see 5 to 10 times the amount of backup storage as you are on primary. Think of the 3-2-1 rule: 3 copies of your data, right? So right there, you've made 3 full copies of your data. And that's just the one use of that as well. So in a typical backup solution, you're going to see massive storage growth of secondary storage and cloud storage happening. With Aparavi and our pruning, our storage-based reduction, and our true forever incremental technology, you're going to see reductions up to 75%. This gives you huge cost savings over time. From your cloud locations, typical backup solutions are based mainly on premises, and cloud really was a bolt-on or a connector, or they use a gateway, for example. They weren't cloud optimized. With Aparavi, it's built fully for a hybrid or multi-cloud infrastructure. This gives you true storage and cloud independence, as you're going to be able to move to the cheapest possible location as you want, whether you want to do a trickle migration or a bulk migration. We support either one. From a data format, pretty much all typical backup solutions that I've seen use proprietary formats, a CMV file or .vk file or what have you. That you don't have any idea what happens. With Aparavi, it's an open format, and along with that open format, we give you the dynamic, open cloud migration, which results in no software or cloud lock-in whatsoever. So partner stuff, the Aparavi Advantage Partner Program. This is, you are the first to hear of this. The MSP group that we're talking to now. We have not publicly made any massive announcements. We just launched the web page, partner page for it today. So we wanted to give you guys some exclusivity there. But we built the partner program around service providers specifically, not channel partners or VARs, not pure play resellers, but actually organizations like you who are offering services to customers. So again, multi-tier, multi-tenant support, SaaS-based model with no upfront fees. We're billing for aggregate total usage based on the actual source data selected. The huge benefit there is we're only billing for it once, right? So as opposed to how much data you stored in the cloud, each version of a file adds to your storage, adds to your bill, for example. Because Aparavi is not storing any data, we're not too concerned with that. So we're only billing you for what you've selected at the source to be backed up. Very healthy margins. You're the first to learn about this. We're giving you guys a 30% discount off of our list price that you're going to see on the website. And there's no revenue requirements or annual minimums, nothing like that that's going to preclude or exclude you guys from being able to run this as a service for even your small clients out there. And we've got a free 60-day trial with no capacity caps on it whatsoever for you guys to really get this out there and run a POC with your customers. All right, so questions. First question. This is not the view from my office, but if I stick my head out a couple windows and look all the way down the street, that's what I see.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're about a mile in from the beach. Which is great.
Very cool.
Yeah, I apologize for my ETOP friends who are on here who are out in San Bernardino, Riverside area. But you can come visit.
Right. So let's see here. All right. So first question. This sounds interesting for legal scenarios. Do you have any e-discovery case studies?
E-discovery case studies, not quite yet. So one of the reasons that our e-discovery stuff is a kind of futureware, right? So we talked about classification and content-based search. All of those things are features that are in our next release, which is due out, I believe, in June. So e-discovery is something that our open data format supports. If you are looking at like there's dedicated software for specifically e-discovery, right? And that's all they're doing. By having our open data format, they can actually make sense of our files out in cloud storage without having to do full retrievals of those to learn from your data. If that makes sense. So is Aparavi e-discovery? No, I wouldn't classify us as that. We are a much smarter with e-discovery type tools for backup and archive.
Okay. Follow-up question. He wants to know if there will be an extra cost for that.
No. So we're flat licensing. We're not plugins. We're not saying, oh, you've got this, it's this fee, or you've got that for this fee. So all our classifications and search, all that stuff is going to be native to the software itself. We really don't believe in plugins. We want to keep this as simple as humanly possible.
Can we back up the NAS data to the cloud?
Yeah. So you can define a path location. I'd want to have one of our SEs kind of talk to you about that. From what NAS are you using? I guess if it's something that uses NDMP, like a NetApp file or something like that, no. But if it's
he's using a QNAP.
Oh, QNAP, nice. Okay, yeah, QNAP, QTS 4.0 in there. Yeah, I don't think there should be any issues with that because you can define the path location that you want to pull the data from, as long as whatever machine's running the agent can see that NAS as a drive letter, then there should be no issues with that.
Do you have any pricing calculators so we can show or just even see what the savings are going to look like with the multi-cloud stuff?
I hate calculators. I'll say it right now. No vendor calculator is accurate.
Very true.
Yeah. So we usually work on a per client basis, and once we do a POC, we can start to model that out because we're dealing with real data as opposed to the perfect case scenario for the vendor, right? So for us, it's like, okay, let's look at what you're historically doing. Let's implement Aparavi, and we can look at what's just saved immediately, from our compression, from our dedupe, from our pruning, and then we can start to see what are your change rates if you want to. Our calculators are just difficult. We really, again, I don't believe in them because you can go to any calculator and come up with 6 different answers. Doing different. It's just they're never accurate.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you my own question. It's going to be a tougher question.
Great.
So you mentioned earlier that you're not going to bill for how many different versions of a file we have.
Yeah.
You're not going to, you said all this different stuff, and you said because we're not actually storing the data.
Yep.
So with that said, why are we paying you per gig or terabyte when you're not storing the data? Why aren't we just paying you a flat monthly fee per license of this software? Since it's in my opinion, it's no different than Veeam or StorageCraft in the sense that they aren't storing the data either. They're just the means to the end.
Sure. So this is a tougher question of our methodology of why we chose our pricing. Our focus as a company is on servers with data, right? Lots and lots of data, not necessarily workstations, not necessarily. So when we decided to do our pricing, there she is. Hold on. Hey.
And I don't know if you mentioned anything earlier. They are a dog-friendly office.
Yeah.
So
this is Rio, Datadog Rio. So let me put her back down here and make sure she doesn't keep yelling. You're all right. I feel like she just saved me from having to answer a tough question, but I'll still answer it. So we actually chose that model because it was the most fair and predictable model for organizations with larger data sets that were looking at Commvault licensing, for example, at $7,000 a terabyte. So when we did our licensing structure for a model standpoint, we wanted to keep things as simple as possible and as fair as possible. So if you look at our pricing, I mean, we're talking at list price 3 cents per gig per month. So $30 a terabyte. It is not a huge, massive payout. And what we figured out is that most organizations didn't want a CapEx model where they're having to pay in advance for something. They want to pay for what they're actually using, as opposed to a flat fee. That said, do we have the capability to choose for a flat fee if someone wants to do that? If there's a business case there, like we're flexible. We're not locked into one model for all time. So if
a company would rather do CapEx, you can figure out how to make that happen for them.
We could figure out how to make it happen. I'm not going to guarantee you that we'll make it happen, but if it makes logical sense, then absolutely. It's going to be a kind of a win-win scenario there.
Fair enough. Now, Zach just brought something up. I'm going to double check it. He said, just as an FYI, clicking on full pricing list on your website throws a 404 error.
Oh, so I know that we are revising that. We're in the process of revising it. My guess on that is they screwed something up. So I will, thank you. I appreciate that. That's huge. Yeah.
All right. So is there a possibility for this to do automated billing to the client, or do we have to bill us and we bill them?
So our platform does have a billing tool, and we do have capabilities in that if you want to use our billing platform. 90% of the MSPs we talk to want to book the revenues themselves, and they want to bill their clients directly. So I'm a little bit surprised at that request, but it is capable of doing so, yes. So if you wanted to go on you could have us bill your clients directly, and then we could just cut you a check every month, for example. Yeah.
So earlier you said you said you said you can just move your data.
Yep.
But how long does it take to move terabytes of data, even just getting it backed up?
Yeah. So it's important. There's two things. We call it like a trickle migration, because it's what we're doing is there's 3 scenarios for data migration, or mainly three. So most organizations will not do a bulk migration. They just won't, for the reason you mentioned it. No organization in the right mind is going to take a 100 terabyte Amazon job and just migrate it over to Google, right? It requires too much skin in the game, and it's just not going to happen. So our migration is designed to be a trickle migration where essentially you're shutting off the old cloud. So let's say you've got 30 terabytes in Amazon. You've moved over the last 5 years, you've moved 30 terabytes to Amazon, and you're like, you know what? I don't want a single new gig or megabyte to go into Amazon. That's how we work. So you're able to then select a new cloud, and then all the changed and new data is going to go to the new cloud location while still allowing retrievability and recoverability from that old cloud location. What will happen is as the files, the 30 terabytes that you had in Amazon over 5 years, as they hit the retention periods, our pruning is going to start removing the data out of there, right? So then you're trickle migrating, we're cleaning up behind ourselves. So that's kind of the preferred scenario that we've seen organizations want is, I don't want it to grow anymore in Amazon, and I want to migrate everything, migrate all my changes and new files to a new cloud location. That said, if you want to bulk migrate, you can, right? Maybe it's only a terabyte, maybe it's only 400 gigs, for example, and you're just like, you know what, forklift it. We have that tool capability as well.
Okay, so I just want to recap. This is Jonathan Calmese.
Yeah.
All right. Jonathan Calmese with Aparavi. And he's talking to us about his backup tool. And it's also an archival tool.
Yep.
So Aparavi, I just want to try and put a little bow on this. So let's see if I get it right.
All right.
This is not disaster recovery business continuity. This is simply long-term archival. And this is not workstation backups, which is why you don't have a Mac version of your software. So for the people that need that business continuity, you still are going to say, go out and get yourself a Datto box or Veeam or insert brand here. I mean, you're not going to tell people what to do. I'm sure Nova Store would love if you told everyone to use their stuff, but
Yeah, they would.
So you're not doing that piece of the puzzle. However, people don't have to go out and get a 10 terabyte Datto box to back up their 1 terabyte server simply because they need to make sure they have X number of years of data. Now you're saying just go get the 2 or the 4 terabyte or whatever seems good enough for your application, and then use our tool to do long-term archival out to the cloud. And you can use a ton of different cloud solutions, whether it's Amazon's AWS infrastructure, Microsoft's Azure, and I think you mentioned Oracle.
IBM is currently certified. Oracle is in the works.
Okay. And then Wasabi, which who doesn't love Wasabi? I mean, with their sushi. So that covers the software. And then you just mentioned that you guys recommend a trickle migration, which basically if they have a bunch of stuff already out there in the cloud, and let's say it's on Amazon, and we're going to say someday you are able to support Backblaze B2. Okay, because it's a hope of everyone.
I do that as a burning request, and like I mentioned, today is the inauguration of our MSP platform, and if the community is Backblaze B2, Backblaze B2, Backblaze B2, then it's going to get.
Well, look at the pricing. I mean, it's a no-brainer for us. I mean, so with that, let's just assume, this is in the hopefully not too distant future. I've got a client, all their stuff right now is on AWS. It's costing them a fortune. And I say, okay, you know what? Let's start using Backblaze B2, but let's assume that for the next, X number of years, whatever their retention policy is, you're still going to have this bill with Amazon, and it's slowly going to get smaller.
Yeah.
As things prune themselves out, because your software is going to take care of that for us.
Yep, that's right. So again, it's going to be important and imperative to make the differentiation that if you've got pre-existing data in Amazon, you're going to have to re-index it with Aparavi in order to gain that capability, right? So if you haven't moved your data to Amazon with Aparavi, we're not going to be able to just go in net new and say like, oh, we know everything about your data. There are some restrictions there.
So let me ask the knucklehead dumb question. So let's say I use Cloudberry and I'm creating backups and putting them in Amazon. And then I say, you know what? Let's not even make up a reason. Let's just say I switch to Aparavi. No reason. I just switch. So you're saying that I can use Aparavi to index everything on Amazon that Cloudberry backed up?
No, I'm saying you can't do that, right? So
okay,
yeah, as of today, there's some discussion of and we're probably going to model this out in the future with a friendly, but there's some discussion about actually being able to index, existing backup companies' formats. So that's something that's future. But as of right now, it's not necessarily saying, I want to switch backup vendors and cloud simultaneously. It's more saying, I want to benefit from Aparavi for the long-term archival benefits, the pruning, et cetera. I'm going to implement that tool. And then maybe over the course, you implement it today, and then over the course of the next 7 years, you decide you want to move cloud locations. We give you that freedom. Anything that happened before us, we're not privy to, right? So we're not as of today. So we're not that smart yet.
So as some of you guys know, you've been watching for a while, we recently had Cloudberry on, and Cloudberry did a nice deal for us and extended a bunch of credit to people that signed up by the middle of April. So we still have a deal. It's just not the sweet deal, right? That said, the feedback I'm hearing from people on Cloudberry is hit or miss. Some people are pretty impressed. Other people are like, these guys don't know. They don't know anything. I can't find a nice way to say that. How would you say your software compares to Cloudberry's file level backup? Nothing fancy, just backing up files.
So I haven't done comparisons on Cloudberry per se. We focused more on the enterprise backup tools that are out there. I'm not going to hate on competition, so I'm not going to really comment on they don't know what they're doing or that. For Aparavi,
I appreciate that.
This is our fifth backup engine. So our CTO, and co-founder Rod Christensen, he wrote Yosemite Tapeware. He wrote CA ArcServe's DDD product. He wrote the integration for Novastore between their backup lines. Several others. He's a genius. He's a backup genius, right? He's not.
Sounds like it.
He's not coming out and saying, "Oh, I'm a really good, Python engineer, blah blah blah. Let me work on your backup product." He's saying, "I'm a really good backup engineer. I'm going to build this," and this is kind of his brain share. So, I can tell you that he has experienced every pain that you probably have already experienced, from a engineering standpoint. The way that we are putting files out to cloud is proprietary, it's patented, and it's really smart. And every analyst out there is telling us that no one else is doing it. So the best I can offer you guys as far as comparing, Cloudberry to Aparavi is, throw as much data at us as you can for 60 days and let's, see how it works. We'll support you through that entire process, and we'll be here to help you. But as far as comparing to somebody else, it's difficult to do. So
are there any limits in place for restoring data? Or is that more of a, it depends on where you're storing it type of question?
Yeah, so Aparavi has no limitations on data recovery or retrievability. No.
And you're not, with the software, you're not doing any type of bandwidth throttling because you don't care because it's not your cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, we don't bandwidth throttle at all. We actually multi-stream to S3. So because we're placing data as each file is an individual object, we can do 32 concurrent files to Amazon S3.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That reminds me of, and as silly as this sounds, that reminds me of like FileZilla. When I'm doing FTP, I got to make sure I go into my FileZilla settings when like I do a fresh install of that software, and I change it from concurrent connections 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And what it does, I mean, it's literally doing the same thing you just mentioned. And you know what people don't realize is with what I'm doing with FileZilla, I'm usually uploading data for a website. So with that, you know, there's tons of these tiny little, you know, 1K, 10K files, and the request takes forever to just do that for a single file. So when it's and so, you know, there's the blip of time, a very small blip where it's actually uploading data when the files are that small, but it's got to do all the other FTP authentication, put request, list request, all that other stuff to make sure it's doing its thing. So the fact that I have the ability with FileZilla to up that to 10, that makes an upload of you know, a WordPress plugin 20 times faster. Like it's significant.
Yeah.
So the fact that you guys are doing that, and you've even, you know, set up to do up to 32 at once. The fact that you guys are doing that is already impressive for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we test,
that's for uploads. Sorry to interrupt. That's for uploads. What about for downloads?
Good question. I don't know the answer. I'm not going to make one up. Don't know the answer.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we're going to use your tool to bring back data if we need to restore something.
Yeah. So if you need to restore something out of the cloud, for example, like it's not on a checkpoint or it's not on a snapshot, right? So if you're recovering something that's more than, well, let's say it's going to depend, right? So if it's more than a year old, for example, then yeah, I can guarantee you it's out in archive, right? If it's you know, a week old, for example, and you're holding, you know, 7 weekly snapshots, then it's in your snapshot. Then it's already on local storage. It's just right back, right? Not necessarily in the cloud because it's on our software appliance. So it's going to be dependent. Where you recover from is dependent on whether you need data from an archive for a snapshot or from a checkpoint, and you can define that in the job. But yeah, I'll have to find the answer as far as, you know, if we can multi-thread on a retrieval job or a recovery job from cloud. I doubt we can. I doubt it.
Was that, you don't think you do that?
I don't know the answer, but I doubt it. How about that?
Okay. And the only reason I thought that would be helpful is, you know, again, if it's going to speed up uploading those tiny files, it's also going to speed up downloading all those tiny files too. So,
yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Now, if we're only recovering one file, obviously I don't expect that to be a multi-threaded thing.
Yeah. So we don't have to recover a base and then apply all the incremental changes to it. We don't do that. So to solve that issue, right? It's not necessarily going to matter because you're only bringing back one file. You're not bringing back the base file and then all your incremental changes. We don't have to rebuild it that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's part of our patent.
And then, so we're able to migrate files from a file server and archive them completely off the file server. So let's say my file server's starting to get full. Can I say, all right, Aparavi, do your thing? And it archives some of the older things that it can tell we're not touching off to the cloud. Is it doing that?
Yeah. So by policy, you're going to define, you know, the rules for that. It's not automated by Aparavi. You guys are actually going to define that. And then, but yeah, the software will, if you want it to, will clean up if the file hasn't been accessed for, a year, 2 years, what have you, the software is able to discover that and then archive it off. Looking at, metadata, etc.
And Ron wants to know if that can leave a link to the new location of the file. I don't think it's going to work that way, right?
Stubs, links, dynamic links. Yeah. So from again, this is our Rod Christensen, our CTO. He refuses to do stubs because of all of the inherent problems that stubbing has. They get broken all the time. Comprise recently kind of rolled out this dynamic link technology that we're fairly interested in. There's a couple other groups. Moonwalk is another group that does it this way. But what we are still scoping out exactly how we want to present it in the UI. If we want it to be, as a user on a file server access that file, it says this file has been archived, right? And you go to your web UI and you view it from there, or we actually use a dynamic link, for example, that just points to where that data is.
Sorry, I started typing a response. Lonnie said, and I think I can answer this one for you, and we're only talking about archival of data, not backing up machines as images and being able to spin up machines in the cloud. And the answer to that is you are correct, Lonnie. I recapped it about 16 minutes ago. Feel free to rewatch the 1 hour mark on YouTube later. Basically what I said was they play nice. So if you need to go out and get yourself a Datto box, or you want to use Veeam, or Altaro, I think is another great one out there. You can absolutely do that and use that as your disaster recovery and business continuity device. You just don't have to have one that's got crazy excessive amounts of storage, because this can take care of the long-term archival, and that can just take care of the short-term business continuity for you. Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings is a good availability solution makes a terrible archival solution, right? Because they're looking at entire images as opposed to individual discrete files, which makes managing that data long-term an impossibility. There is no movement of data once it's in the cloud. There is no pruning of individual file data once it's in the cloud. So you end up with having to store so much more. Where Aparavi, this is a little anecdote, but our first tagline was nobody needs backup, and I scrapped it because I thought it was a stupid not a stupid. It was an overgeneralization, because it's like, look, nobody needs traditional backup, and so where we're saying right now is you've got business continuity on one side of the data protection spectrum, and then you've got archive all the way on the other. And then you've got some groups that are hardware focused. They're trying to do all things, right? A lot of vendors have been trying to do backup for archive, and it just doesn't work long term. It'll work for the short term, but it's not going to work long term. And it's ill advised to implement at any scale. The Aparavi solution is saying, because we are preparing backup for archive, you can use this as a file backup tool. Absolutely, day in, day out. Your checkpoints, your snapshots, guess what? Those are backup, right? That's just what that is. It's local on-premise backup for high availability or high speed recoverability, and then you use us for the archive for the long-term data retention as well, because we've indexed the information in a way, we've made it available from search standpoint, we've classified it, and we have the tools to correctly archive it into a multi-cloud environment for the future. So it's not like you want to use a file backup tool that has an image-based plugin that also does this. You want to use a business continuity tool for high availability, maybe in-cloud failover. And then you want to use an active archive tool like Aparavi for your file-based backup and your long-term data retention and archival.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then Pre-J asked a follow-up question. Earlier, you were talking about those really neat tools that you're looking into for ways to kind of like link the files that are no longer on the server. He said, so you're saying in the future it could be like OneDrive files on demand where it pulls it from wherever the file really is? But I don't think that's the case, because when I think of OneDrive, I think of data sync and data sharing. And I don't think you guys want to be that. I think you want to focus on one thing, and that is data archiving.
Yeah, correct. So it won't be like a OneDrive or a SharePoint, for example. Those are actually going to be future data sources for us, where we're picking up data from, because Microsoft's rules around how long they'll actually hold that data after you delete it is not that long. Yeah, so we're not going to be like a file sync and share tool now. We're more designed around the compliant archival of the data for 7 years. And longer. Some of our customers want to hold it indefinitely.
And he wants you to clarify OneDrive or SharePoint. Those are data sources you can back up.
Future data sources. Yep. So as of today, we're focused on the data you're aggregating on premises or in your infrastructure as a service environments, right? Whether it's a colo, whether it's EC2, et cetera. We right now, wherever you can install our service on, we can protect and archive. But if it's a cloud software as a service, those connectors are kind of future roadmap items.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right, my friend. Let me double check one other place. All right, we have answered all the questions.
Good.
I really appreciate this. This was great. Yeah. And as many people are learning, for whatever reason, Thursday has become like Chinese food Thursday for many of the people that watch these webinars. So I just, Jonathan, I'm eating your fortune cookie, but I'll give you the fortune at least. Okay.
Oh, all right.
So an investment in yourself will pay dividends for the rest of your life.
Ah.
And then we're supposed to end this with in bed, right?
Yes, that's what they say. That sounds like a lonely future then.
Oh, brother. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
I look forward to having you on in the future. Maybe sometime again later this year or early next year. I want to see where Aparavi goes, man.
Yep.
I want to see how all that works out for you.
Yeah, we were awarded a 2018 vendor to watch. Gartner just did an article about us for their users. You can check out our website, Aparavi.com. Some of you have already found 404 errors on there, which I will figure out hopefully immediately. But if you guys are interested in seeing the software, seeing a demo, you can actually schedule a demo right from our website. Provides a meeting link that you just select when you want to do it. It schedules a time with us. So we would be happy to do an actual true demo walkthrough of the platform itself with you. Yeah, we can absolutely do another one of these, Steve. These are great.
Wonderful. And just because I want to show everybody the website, you've got a fantastic looking website too.
Thank you.
This is how you spell the company name, just in case you guys forgot, aparavi.com. You can click this button right up here, request a demo, and you fill this out, and they'll get you a working demo. And I think you said throw as much data as you want at the demo for 60 days.
Correct.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Again, I just want to remind you guys that next week we have our next MSP roundtable. Those are very much like mastermind sessions where we all get together and just talk about any problems we've encountered in our business, or talk about any opportunities that have come up, and we want to make sure we succeed and win that opportunity. The week after that, we have SlingerBot joining us, and that one is pretty cool. SlingerBot is a plugin, not a plugin. SlingerBot is an integration with Autotask, and I see that they integrate Autotask and Slack. So I know that there's already a pretty nice ConnectWise integration out there with Slack. So SlingerBot is bringing that. And I see SlingerBot actually integrates with some other really cool looking tools as well. I'm not sure if it takes all of those tools and makes them work together, similar to Zapier, or if it's just an Autotask to Slack thing that they've built. We'll ask them more about that in a couple weeks. And then in 3 weeks from today, we have another MSP processes and procedures session. This one's going to be very much like the first one that we did almost a year ago. And, you know, with technology, a lot has changed in the last year. So I'm looking forward to getting some experts in to talk about marketing, sales, onboarding, and service delivery, and you know, just see what things are happening in the industry these days. So thanks so much, everyone. Thank you again, Jonathan. This was fantastic.
Yeah,
I do hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. See you next